So here we are in Photoshop, and let's make that assignment first. And you know what? I didn't, as I was looking at that, we used to have our size 9 inches by 4 inches. Now it's 1024 by 768. So I have to remember that, 1024 by 768. So I'm going to go to File, New, and this is a chance for you guys to write down notes, okay? Get out that piece of paper, get out that pen or pencil, and write down. This is the process that you're going to use for making your first assignment. So write this down. Step 1, go to File, New. Write this down. Step 1, go to File, New. And see here in the new window where it says width, we're going to change this from inches to pixels. Okay, we're going to change this from inches to pixels. And in pixels, we're going to put 1024, and in height, 768. And our resolution is going to be 72. And the color mode is RGB. Does everyone have that? Write down all those settings. 1024, 768, resolution 72, color mode RGB. And then click OK. So step 1, we are going to change the color of this background. So to do this, we have to make a new layer. So write this down. The shortcut key to make a new layer is Shift Command N. Shift Command N. If you are on a PC, it's going to be Shift Control N. Shift Command N if you're on a Mac, Shift Control N if you're on a PC. Now you're going to click OK. So see here in my Layers panel how now I have this new layer above my white background. Now this new layer is what I'm going to color in with a background color. And I'm going to use my paint bucket tool to do that. So over here on the left side of the screen, there's this toolbar. And you might see in the middle of your toolbar an icon that looks like a gradient. So it's a square that's dark on one side, light on the other. Some of you may see on this button a paint bucket that looks like that. Both are right, okay? The gradient, which is the square that's dark on one side, light on the other, is roommates with the paint bucket. So if you see one or the other, you know the other one is living in the same house. So all you have to do is click on that button, click and hold, and you can see the gradient and the paint bucket tool, they're roommates together, okay? The first tool that we're gonna use though is the paint bucket tool. So again, some of you may have to access the paint bucket tool by first knocking on the gradient tool's door, clicking and holding on it until the paint bucket tool appears. Again, they are roommates together. Okay. Now we're gonna go down to the bottom of the tool panel and you have your foreground and your background colors. The foreground color is the color that's on top, and this is what color is going to appear whenever you use one of the tools. So I'm going to click on my foreground color, which is, in this case, it's pure black, and what I'll do is I'll select the color blue from my color picker, and I'll select a kind of a dark blue from my color picker here. So this is where you select the hue on this little color bar slider, and this is where you select, you know, how saturated or how dark or how light it is. If I wanted light blue, I would choose a color that's up here. If I wanted dark blue, I'd choose a color that's here. If I wanted a desaturated grayish blue, I'd choose a color over there, okay? So I'm choosing a dark blue, and then I am going to click with my paint bucket tool on my canvas, and as you can see, I have filled in my canvas with the solid blue color. And that is the first tool that you have to use for this assignment. I use the paint bucket tool to fill in my background with a solid color. Now I'm going to make a new layer, Shift-Command-N to make a new layer, Shift-Command-N to make a new layer. And the next thing I have to do is use the shape layer tools to make some random shapes. Now, if I started making random shapes with dark blue as my foreground color, would you be able to see those shapes? No. If you draw with dark blue on a dark blue background, you're not going to be able to see what you've drawn. So we need to change our dark blue to a different color than the background. And so I'm going to click on the dark blue foreground color, and I'm going to select a different color. The same, I'll click orange from the color picker, and I'll choose kind of a light orange up here, and I'm going to click OK. And now the tool I'm going to use is the ellipse tool. So I'm going to go over here and to my custom shape layer tools, which are towards the bottom of my tool panel. And all the custom shape layer tools are roommates together. So if I want to use the custom shape tool, which looks like a little amoeba, you know, it might be hidden under the ellipse tool, right? So some of you might see this circle ellipse tool at the bottom of your tool panel, and you'll have to click on it in order to get to the custom shape tool. Some of you might see a rectangle tool right there, and so you'll have to click on it in order to get to the ellipse tool or the polygon tool. All of these shape tools, again, they are all roommates together. They all live on the same button. So you have to sometimes click on whatever is showing in order to see what is underneath. Okay, so I'm going to use the ellipse tool first. And you have, with our ellipse tool, with all of our shape tools, you have a number of options available at the top of the screen. You have the pixels option, the path option, and the shape option. The pixels option, the path option, and the shape option. I want to always encourage you as much as possible to only use the shape option. The shape option creates vector shapes, which, as we learned from our discussion this week, are easy to resize. Now, if I were to use the pixels option, what would happen? I'd hold down the Shift button, I'd click and drag at a diagonal angle in order to make a shape. And so far, this looks good. This looks fine. But let's say I wanted to resize that shape. And so I went to Command-T, and I held down the Shift button. Command-T, by the way, is a shortcut key that you want to write down because it's the shortcut key that you're going to use 1,000,000 times in this class to resize an object. So Command-T, write that down, Command-T. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button, click and drag at a diagonal angle. So let's say I want to resize this ellipse really big. As you can see, as I've been resizing this ellipse, instead of the circle edge being nice and smooth, the circle edge has gotten very blurry and pixelated. That's because I was using the pixels option up at the top of the screen. So in order to avoid that blurry pixelated mess, I'm going to hit Shift Command N to make a new layer. I'm going to still use my ellipse tool, but this time I'm going to use the shape option. And now watch, I'm going to hold down the Shift button, hold down Shift, click and drag at a diagonal angle, let go of my clicker, and now we have a circle. It looks a little bit different than our pixel-based circle. This properties window has shown up. And the handy thing about this properties window is that it allows you to easily change the color of your shape. So if I've decided that this kind of super light orangey color isn't for me, I can go click on the little color swatch here in the properties window. I can click on this color picker and I can go, okay, I want it to be a little bit redder. How about maybe a little bit yellower? And I'm going to choose kind of a yellowish color now. And you can also adjust other things. Like I can put a stroke or an outline around the shape by going here. And I'll click on kind of a blue color. Then I can kind of increase the size of the circle like so. And if I don't want a straight line, I can choose a dotted line instead. Okay. So you have all of these different settings in the properties window. You can also, if you want to make your properties window go away, you have all of these different settings that you can play with up here and at the top of the screen. Right, so I could choose orange instead. And the other really cool thing about using the shape layers option rather than the pixels option is that I can easily resize. So I can hit Command T, I can hold down the Shift button, and I can click and drag on the corner at a diagonal angle, and see as I resize it, it doesn't become blurry and pixelated. The edge is nice and smooth. So that's just a couple of the requirements for this week's assignment. You have now changed the background color, which was a requirement using the paint bucket tool. You've also used the custom shape tool to make an ellipse. Now the next tool that we're going to use is really, really fun. It's called the polygon tool. The polygon tool. And what this is going to allow us to do is make a star. Okay, so this time I'm going to turn my stroke off, and we're still going to be on the shape tool. So to turn my stroke off, I'll just click on this little, I'll click on stroke, and then I'll click on this little gray box with a red line through it. And then where it says fill, how about I'll choose kind of orange color instead. Oh, I'm still on my ellipse layer, so let's go back. I'll choose my yellow color, and I'll choose my stroke. That's a yellow color. It's a little bit too yellow. How about that? Okay, there we go. Okay, now we got to make a new layer. So Shift Command N to make a new layer. Now I'll change my fill color to that orange. And turn off my stroke. Good. And now what I'm going to do is make a star by going to this little gear icon here at the top of the screen, this little gear. And I'll click on star. I'll turn off smooth corners for now. I'll click on star. And I'm going to indent my sides by 99%. And watch this. And by the way, this is a section where everyone's always like, whoa, that's so cool, do that again. So be sure to be writing this down. Where it says sides, I'm going to put 99. How about, I know, 66. There we go. Now watch this. I'm going to click and drag. And now I've created this cool starburst. Now right now it looks kind of silvery because I still have the path around it showing that it's a shape layer and not a pixel-based object. But if I make a new layer by going to Shift Command N, you can see it's kind of like this starburst. It's kind of got a Japanese feeling to it a little bit, I think. And then I'm going to, what I'll do is I'll I'll show you how these different layers work. So I can move this polygon, this star that I've made underneath my ellipse layer. And now watch this, see? Now it's like this big circle with like the starburst behind it. Now let me show you again how to make some different stars using this tool. So first step, you want to make sure that you go to the polygon tool in your tool panel. And then you want to make sure that you go to the little gear icon here. Now this time I'll indent my sides by 90 and I'll do smooth indents. And this time I'll put, how about 13 points on my star. And now watch this. So now we have a completely different kind of star. Now let's turn off smooth indents and we'll do smooth corners and let's see how that looks. Isn't that cool? Now smooth corners tends to look a lot more interesting when you have less of an indentation. So I'm going to indent my sides this time by 40%. Now watch this. See, now it's kind of like almost like a flower. And that is the polygon tool, you guys. Now I'm going to make a new layer. Another tool that's pretty self-explanatory is the rounded rectangle tool. And with the rounded rectangle tool, it basically makes a rectangle that has kind of a rounded edge. You also have this little gear icon where you can adjust your settings, but the radius is what we'll play with most. Right now I have my radius set to 100, and this is going to affect how much curve is in the corners. So watch this. Now see how my corners are very, very rounded looking right now? That's because my radius is at 100 pixels. Now let's say I just wanted to see the rounded rectangle shape, but I don't want to cover up everything. I can choose from this orange color here, I can choose the box that has the no color in it, the gray with the red line through it. So now I have no color, and then I can choose the stroke. So I can choose kind of an orange color for the stroke, and I can increase the stroke, and I can do something like that. Isn't that cool? And if I don't want it to be a straight line, I can use either dashes or I can use dots like that. Let's see a different type of rectangle. Make a new layer. And this time, instead of making my radius 100 pixels, I'll make it 20 pixels. And I'll choose a different color. How about like a light pink? Click and drag and see how this is kind of different. And with this one, I'll just show you something that you can do that's kind of cool. And this is just something that you can experiment with, not required for the assignment. You can do something really, really easy for the assignment if you wanted to. Now see here, we have our rounded rectangle shape is on one layer. And on your layer panel, you can drag layers underneath each other. So I can drag my pink rounded rectangle behind everything else, like that. And I can also adjust something called blending modes. So right now, my blending mode is set to normal. But watch what would happen if you set it to overlay, right? It kind of brightens everything. Or if you set it to hard light, It blends between the background and the foreground, or a vivid light, you know, or soft light. So we're going to learn a lot about blending modes later, but experiment with the blending modes and see how these different colors interact with each other. That's subtract, by the way, and divide and hue. That's kind of nice. I like that. And you can also adjust the opacity. So I can lower the opacity of that background layer like that. Okay, so now we have used the ellipse tool. We've used the custom shape tool. No, we've used the polygon tool. We've used the rounded rectangle tool. Now let's use the custom shape tool. So I'm going to make a new layer. Again, Shift Command N to make a new layer. And I can go to, again, the custom shape tool. Down here, the shape layers is also what it's called. And I can go to my custom shape tool. And the custom shape tool gives us access to the custom shape library. So up here at the top of the screen, you'll see the word shape, and then you'll see all of these different icons if you click on the downward facing arrow next to the shape icon. And you get the custom shape library, which has all of these cool shapes that you can draw. So let's say you wanted a moon for your composition. You can use this moon here. Click on it. And now I can click and drag, and there's my moon. And it's a shape, so I can continue to play with the colors. I can make it kind of blue if I wanted, which is kind of nice. I can put a stroke on it if I want, make it like a little pink stroke. Like that. And I can also move it around. So the shortcut key that I use to move something around is just the letter V on my keyboard. So I just click the letter V once, and then I'm able to move my moon around like so. So we've used the all the required tools. Pretty cool, right? So let's save this, and you're going to see it's totally easy to save your files and your projects. The first thing, though, that you want to do is always save your native file format. And I want you to write this down. Write down the words, save your native file format, and circle that. The native file format is the .photoshop file, the .psd file. And this is the file that has all of your layers and all of your settings. And this is the file that you can then make changes to as you go on in the program, and as you go to your capstone class, you can then open your PSD file and make changes to this project. The file that you're going to send to clients and employers is your JPEG and your PDF. And for this class, you're going to be turning stuff in as a JPEG. But for yourself, for the file that you're going to back up, it's going to be a .psd. So I'm going to go to File, Save As first. And again, this is not the file that you're going to be turning in. This is the file that you're saving for yourself. And you're going to go to your desktop, and you're going to make a folder. So down at the bottom of my save window, you're going to click New Folder. And you're making a folder called DES104 Schoolwork. And you're making this folder to your desktop. The difference, Victoria, between Photoshop and Illustrator is that Photoshop is a raster-based program, meaning it's made out of pixels, and AI is a vector-based program. And Photoshop is good for digital illustrations and for photographs, and AI is good for like vector illustrations and logo design and graphics. So we're making a folder that is called DES104 Schoolwork, and we're creating that on our desktop. And for our first assignment, we are going to use the naming convention DES104Week1_your name. And then the format is Photoshop, and then I'm going to click Save. Okay, now I'm going to save the version of the file that is going to be submitted to the gradebook for grading. So I'm going to go to File, Export, Save for Web. File, Export, Save for Web. And this is a good setting, JPEG. Remember, because the required file type that you're going to be turning in is a JPEG. High is good. Also, medium is fine. And then you're going to hit Save. And browse to that folder that you just made, DES104 Schoolwork. And then hit Save. And that JPEG is what you're going to be turning in.